Thank you very much for listening to what I'm going to share with you today. I am tremendously proud to play a role in this. I am extraordinarily passionate about it, and I hope that that will come forward in what I'm going to share. Now, we have done a lot of work in Glasgow. I'm only going to touch a little on that. I'm wanting to try and make this relevant to every one of you in this room, and it's more about the global perspective. So I'm going to start by telling you that earlier this year, my lovely little girl, who's 9, called Amaya, and I watched this film called Wall-E. Let's have a show of hands. Who remembers this guy? So you'll remember that 11 years ago, Disney and Pixar worked together on this movie, and it was a really large poke at consumerism as it is today. The planet was covered in landfill. It was far too hot for human beings to live there, and we all live in some bio-corporate, multi-billion-pound organisation, satellite thingy, and everybody's too fat to do anything. They're all being moved around in little hovercrafts. And the saving grace is there's a love story between the two bots, but my goodness, what a message was underneath that film. And my little girl said to me, "Mummy, could that happen?" And I said, "Not if your mummy's got anything to do with it." I said, because this is really serious. So I'd like to ask you, before we get into any of the technical stuff, to just close your eyes for a couple of seconds. And I want you to get in your own mind's eye, I can see eyes open, please close the eyes. I'd like you to get in the mind's eye somebody who's young, who you love very much. Now, it can be somebody in your own family, it could be a friend of the family, nieces, godchildren, somebody you love. And I want you to hold on to that visual reference of that person whilst we go through this. Because we've all got a really significant role to play in this. And we've got a very significant role to play in this from today. So you please may open your eyes now. Now, before I start talking to you about circular economy and how we're going to save the planet, I'm going to just tell you a couple of things about underlying principles which lie behind this. And the first is that the first principle is enough for all, forever. And the second is this big bad boy. This was a massive light bulb moment for me personally 4 years ago. And this is the COP21 Paris Agreement, which I'm sure you will all have heard regular references to. The intention globally by the world leaders was to make sure the temperature does not go up more than 1.5 degrees. That's effectively what lies behind all of the climate change emergency conversation you're hearing. And as you'll see in the middle graph, beyond renewables and reforestation, or reduced deforestation, too many double negatives in there, the largest driver of change in stopping the temperature going up by more than 1.5 degrees is the circular economy. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. So what exactly is the circular economy? Well, right now we live in a linear society, and it's an economic model shift from linear to circular. And linear basically means we take something, we make something, and we chuck it away. Guess what, guys? Think of Wall-E. Think of that young person that you've got in the forefront of your mind. The circular economy is this. And it's a new economic model which reflects an economist's question, which is much more about how much value can we create when we're doing something, rather than the previous question, which was how much value can we extract when we do something. It fundamentally mirrors nature, and nothing is wasted. And that's what's behind the circular economy. For you in this room, there's a moral imperative. The UK has announced its 2050 target. The First Minister for Scotland's announced the 2045 target you heard Philip refer to this morning. And indeed, last month, Glasgow has announced its ambition to be carbon neutral by 2030. This is a really important battle, and one that we must all seize now. But the really good news for you guys is that this is a $4.5 trillion economic opportunity. This is really good for business. It's good for business, and it's good for society, and it's good for the planet. So why cities? Well, we started on a journey because cities is where the critical mass of people, business, and therefore consumption is. It probably goes without saying when you stop and think about it. But that was a fundamental shift again for Scotland, and the work that Glasgow's been doing with our partners, Zero Waste Scotland, Glasgow City Council, and the Circular Economy in the Netherlands, has been instrumental in changing policy. So now Zero Waste Scotland invests in Glasgow, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, and Tayside and Perthshire to actually help drive some of this forward. 50% of us live in cities at the moment, and by 2050, nearly 70% of the world's population will live in cities. And that growing trend is going to be fueled by the rise of the middle classes, greater mobility, and a more urbanized society. But within that context, the whole concept of consumption has to be radically rethought. Now, Glasgow as a city considers itself a pioneer of revolutions, and indeed we want to be at the forefront of this next revolution. And this will be a revolution. From a Chamber's point of view, we're all about business, as you might imagine. We've got a very important role in the city, but this, for me, it's all about innovation. It's about driving change through innovation, and it future-proofs your business. And it's good for business. It's a $4.5 trillion economic opportunity. So up here, I've got the link to our story so far, which we just published the last 2 weeks. So there's been a lot happening in the last couple of weeks, and Peter Duthie, I know, is in the room, and I'm going to name check something else, which you'll not be surprised to hear me talk about today. But this is what we've been doing in the last 4 years. So rather than me telling you all about what Glasgow's done today, I want you to look at this at your leisure, because today what I'm trying to do and want to do is share with you some of the experiences that are going on globally, which I hope will be relevant to you in this audience from a different sector's point of view. So I've told you about the economic proposition, so what does that mean? That's all very up there and airy-fairy, Alison, I kind of get it, but what does it mean for me? So there are 7 recognised business models in the circular economy, and these are they. I'm not going to walk through every one of them. What I will say to you is the ones on your left are probably going to be the ones you'd expect to see, which is preserving and extending the life as much as you possibly can. It's about using waste as a resort, and yes, it's not that recycling thing. Recycling is probably the last choice you would make in a circular economy journey. It's the last choice. The middle one, I think, is incredibly powerful, which is where you rethink your business model. How are you actually fundamentally running your business? Now, there's some brilliant examples globally. 2 I'll give you briefly. It's a shift from a product-based to a service-based model, Mitsubishi being one. Mitsubishi make lots of elevators. They don't sell elevators now. They basically lease elevators, and they do it on a cost per use basis. Massive shift in business model. Other example, probably more relevant for in the room, is Schiphol Airport. They now buy light from Philips. Philips used to put light bulbs in. They sat down and said, this isn't right, we need to change the way we're doing this, because they believe in the circular economy. They designed a new technology, filament. Now Philips is responsible for that, and they sell light to Schiphol Airport. So it's a complete transformation in business model. Design up the top, absolutely key. How do we design things in? How do we design things out? That's going to be key. As is what Josh has been talking about earlier, digital technology, the disruption that's already happening and going to come even more quickly at us through new technologies, Internet of Things, AI, and all the other different technologies that exist. Massive opportunity, as is this last one down the bottom. Collaboration, absolutely key. But sometimes it's the unexpected collaborations that make you grin. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through a few sector-specific examples, which I hope will bring this a wee bit more to life for you. So the first one is actually InStock, which is a restaurant, and there's actually 3 in the Netherlands. And the first one was in Amsterdam. Really lovely example. A young lady who was basically working at university saw the opportunity where supermarkets have shed loads, that's not a technical term, shed loads of waste. And that could be bags of apples, where the plastic bag might be ripped. Apples are perfectly fine, but in supermarket terms, that's a waste product. So every day their chefs basically harvest products from their local supermarkets and create a bespoke, high-end vegan restaurant offer on the back of that. And it's a really lovely experience. I have actually been to this one. I haven't been to the next one, but I've been to this one. But they've also started doing their own products. They've got beer, they've got granola and so on, using these different products. And that's a really interesting model of people doing things in a slightly different way. The next one is way across the pond. I haven't been to this one, but I'm working on that one. It's called Pastici, which is in New York. And Pastici have really blazoned their story on this, and there is a message in that, the story behind what they do, which is all about people, planet, profit. Now, in this particular instance, they are New York's first 100% carbon neutral restaurant. They have a full circle farm as part of their restaurant, which basically means they grow their own stuff, but they use leftover food waste, and yes, a third of food is wasted, and they then use that to create seedlings, and then they grow stuff, and then it goes back to the plate. It's a full circle farm. And they fuel all their energies through wind, and what the balance is done through planting trees in terms of their carbon neutrality. Then I'm going to go into food and drink. Food and drink. So food and drink and tourism, Scotland's food and drink. James is here today. Mark and the team at Scottish Tourism Alliance, lots of clever stuff happening in Scotland in terms of food and drink. So, and food and drink and tourism. This first example was actually the first one that we landed in Glasgow, which was where people thought, oh, unexpected collaboration. I've mentioned that before. Bread, beer. Old bakers working with Jawbrew, creating hardtack. They saw the potential. They saw the city was going after this in terms of an agenda, and they did the storytelling around that. That was the first thing that landed. And people went, right, I get it now. I get it now. Then you go into a slightly more scientific approach where we've got Quantech, which is a University of Strathclyde spin out. Bio, all about designing the biospace, biology space. But who knew that if you take longustine shells and you grind them down, there's a lovely little product that comes from that, and that can make biodegradable plastic, which could be used to make biodegradable milk cartons. That could fundamentally revolutionize the way packaging's done. That's all coming out of a business startup that's happening in Glasgow right now. Tremendously exciting. Then if we go into events and festivals, of course, it would be utterly rude of me not in Edinburgh to be referencing the magnificence of Edinburgh's festival offer. And on the back of what Glasgow's been doing, as I've mentioned, Edinburgh and Aberdeen and Tayside are all doing that similar regional work with Zero Waste Scotland. Liz McRae and her team in Edinburgh Chamber with the partners in the city have an ambition to try and make the Edinburgh Festival offer circular. And that means how you have your experience, materials, digital, and so on. Because I think we all know how much damage events and festivals can cause by the consumption challenge. So that's really exciting, and watch this space in this fair city, specifically on that brief. And then, this bad boy, So I'm pretty sure most of you will have seen the news. Let's have a show of hands who's not seen this. One person, okay, that's good. So in Glasgow next year, the United Kingdom is going to host the United Nations COP26 Summit on Climate Change. I referenced earlier the Paris Agreement from COP21, and that was the graph at the beginning. Next year, that event will happen in our country in Glasgow. It is, and this is a technical term, massive. There will be 200 world leaders in Glasgow, and nearly 30,000 delegates. And it will be hosted in the SEC. Now, in itself, as an event, there's a massive business opportunity for every single person in here, because they will be coming, they will experience time in the country, and so on and so forth. There's a big economic opportunity. There's also a huge opportunity for the city to look out to be a demonstrator in this space, and there's a massive opportunity for Peter and his team at the SEC to demonstrate even more the work that they've started doing in their circular economy endeavours on the way that they behave as a business, as an actual event delivery agent, as a globally recognised venue. Massive, absolutely massive. I'm going to come back to that. Then we move into the built environment. So I'm going to give you a couple of hotel examples, one of which is QO in Amsterdam. Now, this just opened last year, and it's about as circular as you can get. It has intelligent facade, it has thermal panels, it understands when the number of people are in different spaces and adjusts accordingly. It has intelligent water systems. It has carpet that's made of 100% recycled yarn from fishing nets, just to give you some examples. But on the roof, they have a greenhouse, and that greenhouse basically produces fruit, vegetables, and through aquaponics, fish. And that's all served in the restaurant in the building. Really exciting in terms of being a different model. And in terms of construction techniques, because construction sector is a big area that is being addressed and needs to be addressed, but they've used a third of their concrete was from a shell building in Amsterdam, so they basically brought some of the history and heritage of the city into this new building by using older materials. The next one's coming, and I have to say it looks amazing. It's coming in 2021. It's called FART. Forgive me if there's anybody in the room who's Norwegian, because I'm not entirely sure that's the best pronunciation. But it is going to be the world's first energy positive concept, and every year it's going to reduce its energy consumption by 85%. It's a stunning architectural design set in the Arctic, and it's just an incredibly beautiful part of the world. But that's the kind of new technologies that are coming through in terms of that energy efficient approach with this particular hotel. Then if we move on to technology, because technology affects each and every one of us in the room. First example I'm going to give you is actually a city-based one, but just bear with me. It's digital twinning. Everybody goes, what does that mean? So in this particular instance, it's about cities, but again, bear with me. So it's about digital twinning, where you take the example of the site and you basically create a duplicate that's all driven by data. Lots of nodding over here, that's good. The first one was launched in Davos at the World Economic Forum in January, and it's a town or city in India. And it's basically all data-driven, and through sensors, through drones, and applied analytics, and artificial intelligence, and machine learning. And this basically allows you to control what's happening within that city, including consumption, and including energy consumption in particular. But could that be applied to destinations? Could that be applied to a resort? Let me just chuck that out there as a thought possibility. Then if we go into another kind of digital technology disruptor that's kicking around big time, is 3D printing. So there's a guy called Yves Bihar who's got a business called Fuse Project, and this is going to be the world's first 3D printed community. It's in Latin America. It's actually the basis behind it. I remember I said enough for all, forever as a sort of principle behind it. This is targeted at very impoverished area in Latin America in a farming community. It's all built layer by layer. It significantly reduces construction waste, because so instead of it being 90%, it's down to 10% waste through this process. But again, let's just have a think about that. Could you be building resorts? Could you be building developments or new buildings using this as a technology? And then if you want to take it down to a more granular level, you get your digital file, which is how this all works. And do you go to your local site and get your furniture made instead of shipping it in from another place? So again, just some thoughts. Now, transport clearly has been mentioned this morning. I'm not going to go on about transport a lot because it is one of the most significant areas, mobility in the round. But what I wanted to do today was just literally touch on aviation. Now, aviation's a big noise. People are talking about it. I know we've got at least one, if not two, airports in the audience this morning. I know Glasgow's certainly here, and I think Gordon might be here too, from Edinburgh. So all I'm going to say in this instance is that, again, last month, my goodness, last month it was happening, Airbus Global Markets forecast that we're going to move from 24,000 planes, commercial planes, to 48,000 commercial planes by 2038. Now that's partly because of what I said earlier about the rise of urbanized society and the rise of the middle classes, more people with choice, more people with economic abilities, which is all good. However, that means there's going to be a significant increase in bits of metal in the air. Now, the good thing is that that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity around design. As you see the rise of biofuels and sustainable fuels, electric to be precise. Now, this particular example is called Alice, and she's been basically made, I'm going to call her she, just because she's called Alice, that seems reasonable. She's been invented by an Israeli company called Aviation, and she will hit the skies in 2022. Can only handle short haul, and one of the biggest issues with aviation is going to be long haul. However, these are the kind of new technology and innovations that are coming through, and then I had to show you this one because I thought this was brilliant. Volocopter. Volocopter took its first flights in Dubai 2 years ago, and Volocopter is basically a passenger only with no driver. It's going to change the face of how you move about in urban economies, taking people from the streets into the air, much more efficient, much cheaper, etc., etc. That's actually happening right now. So having been away up in the air, excuse the pun, I'm going to land this right down and say, so what for you? 5 takeaways. First takeaway, look at your business model. I've given you the 7 different specific models around circular economy that you can test in your own business. The second thing is, look at your supply chain. How do you buy from your supply chain? How do you influence them to change? Because every one of you has a responsibility. New ventures and collaborations. If you're putting a building up, if you're looking at a new product, a new system, an unexpected collaboration, what could you be doing? What could you be doing? And then look at your customer service journey. How are they interacting with you as they are coming in their experience with you? And how can you help to educate them? Because not only do you want to get more people consuming from you, you actually want to influence the way they consume, and educating them and then telling your story of what responsible action you're taking is going to be really key. So at the very beginning, I asked you to think about a young person who you loved very much. So I'd like you just to bring them back into the forefront of your mind again. Now, I know, and we all know in this room, one of the biggest reasons that people come to Scotland is because of our environment and our beautiful scenery. What a magnificent country we have. We know that the UK is going to host the United Nations COP26 Summit on Climate Change next year in Glasgow. So I have 2 questions for you to take away today, both of which are actions. The first thing is, could Scotland be #1 in the world for tourism tackling climate change? We've already got in our favour that people think we're pretty groovy in the environment and scenery front. Could we be #1 in the world in that space? The second one is much more personal to you as individuals, which is, how are you going to think differently? And what are you going to do? Because we've all got a very big responsibility for society and for the planet and for our future generations. But remember, it's good for business. And together, we must be the difference. Thank you very much.